Uh, wow, it's kind of crazy, especially in light of the fact that National Signing Day is a week from today, and so I'm hopeful that recruits and parents are reading this piece just so that they understand that it doesn't always happen where the can't miss kid uh, goes through college, goes to the NFL, goes to the Hall of Fame. It's not always the dreamlike career.
Well, and real quick, Joan, you mentioned at one point that he failed the concussion protocol 7 times in a row and then finally passed. Shouldn't part of the concussion protocol be if you can't pass it a certain number of times, or you fail a certain number of times, then you can't play?
So I think that is a good question. He didn't fail it 7 times in a row and then pass on the 8th try. He failed it 7 times during his recovery from that concussion. He estimates, he thinks it was 7. He doesn't have it written down, but he said somewhere between 6 and 8, probably 7 times over the course of that month, I think. But yeah, I think you have to look at it as, obviously you take the test, you undergo the protocol to try to pass it when they're not sure if you're ready yet. But at the same time, that volume of times, failing it, maybe give it another week or 2 before he takes it again instead of waiting a few days. I totally agree.
Joan, you mentioned in the piece how he was receiving interest before he ultimately decided on Indiana. Some of the blue bloods of college football were inquiring about his availability. Why and how did he end up at Indiana?
So that's also kind of a winding road. I didn't go super deep into it in the story just because I didn't need to have like a 6,000-word story. But basically the long and short of it is, he had offers from Alabama, every big name school you can think of. The one he didn't get Clemson, didn't have Ohio State, but had interest there. I mean, every big name school you can think of. He basically really liked Tennessee, and Tennessee was the school he wanted to go to. He liked Butch Jones. He liked the rebuild that was going on there. And I think his outlook was, I'd rather go to a school that's on the up and up, or that's on the, rising up, rather than go to a school that's, always been great. I'd like to be part of a turnaround. So he was all set to go to Tennessee. He's a very smart kid, and so he was always ahead in school and was set to graduate from high school early. And so one of his criteria was, I want to enroll early. I'm going to graduate from high school early. I don't want to sit around for a semester. I want to get there and get training. So all was good to go with Tennessee. And then basically a lot of, weird bureaucratic stuff went down where they didn't want him to announce his commitment because they didn't want to scare away some other receivers. And then they came to him and they said, actually, we don't have a spot for you in the spring at a pretty late date, at which point a lot of his offers had been pulled because he was going to Tennessee and they'd filled the spaces for their receivers. So it came down to Missouri and Indiana, who had space for him. But Missouri, they told him he had to wait for someone else to decommit, and he was worried that the person wouldn't decommit. And so I think Missouri was actually higher on his list, but he was worried about, a spot and that it would, something would go wrong. So it ended up being Indiana, his home state school, which I think he was excited to stay home and kind of try to turn that program around.